Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our Inner Circle Book Club. I am so excited to finally be officially kicking this off with a book. The last couple of times we met, we were doing read alouds because we were just getting people into the Inner Circle. Many of you were ordering books, and so I wanted to make sure that you had that in time. So I'm super excited to be starting off with this book about balance, right? And finding balance in an unbalanced world. How many of you are feeling like life around you is unbalanced, right? All the things, whether it's, whether it's in family relationships, whether it's in your health, whether it's in your career field or what you do for work, whether it's in your finances, there are so many different things that can throw life out of balance. And the sad thing is, I think that most people live that way and they just think like this is normal, like life is just always like this. And yet, I don't think it has to be that way. And so the reason why we're starting with this book is because I love the fact that there is a system to creating balance and have a life that's growing and purposeful. And we don't have to be living by default like everybody else around us. So if you are going to be a part of this book club, you are in a fantastic place if you want to have more balance, growth, and purpose in your life, because that's what we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks. So you may be listening to the replay. This is always going to have the most value for those who come on live, because then we can have the interactive conversation. But I'm going to challenge you, maybe you want to push pause while you're listening to this to really be able to answer and think about some of the things that we're going to be talking about as we go. And then at the end, I will lay out how we're going to break this down. Currently, let's just go through some logistics while we're here. Currently, we are meeting the second and the fourth Tuesday of the month at 12 Central. I tried to pick kind of the midday time so we could hopefully catch lunchtime for people in different time zones and things like that. And then we can reevaluate that if it seems like there would be a better time for us to do something, because I want as many people as possible to be able to be on live, because you have that energy, right? You build off of each other. And I think that's really where the value in a book club comes, is from that conversation that's going on. But if you're watching the replay today because you simply couldn't make it, don't worry about it. Like, the fact that you are here and you're investing this time says a lot about you, right? And so I absolutely love that. Let me just see, somebody's coming in the waiting room. So let me let her in here. So we are going to be tackling this book. And like I said, this is such a great time for us to do this. We're coming out of a couple of years of life being very unbalanced and, and feeling like things are out of our control. And, now it feels like, okay, maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe there is some hope in us being able to kind of find some more balance in our life again. And yet, even when things go back to quote unquote normal, we can't just, I think if we're not careful, we'll fall back into defaults of just, busyness. And, we can blame it on situations that are going on around us, but really the issue is inside of us. Right. And so that's what we're going to do, is we're going to draw that out from here, is what can I do regardless of what's happening in the world around me? What can I do in here? Right. So that I've got that solid place. So no matter what happens, right, I might get shaken a little bit, but I'm not going to be totally blown over. Or if I am blown over, I'm going to be able to get back up again. Right. So this is not about like, everything is going to be perfectly laid out. And we'll talk about that in just a minute, but it's about finding balance. So before we go into, some of the things that we learned from the book, I just want to talk about this whole idea of unbalance, right? Like, because we want to know, what is it that we don't want in our lives? So if you are on live and you're able to answer this, and like I said earlier, for those of you who are watching the replay, you may just want to like pause when we ask these questions and maybe write out your answers in a journal, or maybe just stop and think about them for a minute. But what things are you seeing are unbalanced in the world around us?
Our food supply.
For sure, right? Yep. Food supply, and even the choices that we make. We have a pretty unbalanced diet, even when we have, everything supplied that we could ever want. We often aren't always choosing the things that are going to give us the most balanced nutrition, right? So many things, right? Like that happen around us. I think relationships are out of balance. I think oftentimes, work gets out of balance. What we do is taking up a lot of our time, and we don't have that work-life balance, if there even is such a thing. When it comes to health, right? Where we're dealing with this crisis in our body, and then we're dealing with this crisis in our body, and then we're, back and forth. And I don't know about you guys, but when I think about a balanced life, I think about like, I I have those periods of rest in there, right? And I work hard, but I also have those periods of rest where I can enjoy life and go and do, adventures and fun things and that type of thing. So what do you think of when you, well, let me share this first and then we'll go into what you think of with balance. I pulled these statistics out today because they really just get you thinking about some of these areas that we're going to be diving into in this book and how we are so out of balance. So listen in to these, and I'd be curious to hear which of these really either resonate with you because you're seeing it around you, or they resonate with you because you're seeing it in you, right? Sometimes it's both, right? So in the category of fitness, 42% of people are overweight. And we know that, weight leads to a lot of other health issues. We talked about, being balanced in not just what we have access to, but what we're choosing to put in our mouth. So that, our physical as well as our mental wellness is really, really, important for us to be paying attention to. We have, most people do not have $1,000 in their bank account. So if something were to happen, say, for example, their car broke down, an appliance went out, there was some kind of an emergency, most people would not be able to just go, have that money sitting in a bank account that they can use like at the snap of a finger. And most people are in quite a bit of debt. In fact, they say over 70% of Americans are in pretty extreme amounts of debt that are happening. We talk about relationships. We touched on this earlier, that families are going through a lot, right? There's a lot of stresses on there, and we bring home these things from outside our life, into our family life. And 53% of marriages are ending in divorce. And so you think about the ripple effect that has. And another statistic I recently heard was that the average marriage is lasting 8 years now, which is way different than it used to be, right? So we've got a lot of things being thrown off what you thought, right, was going to be your normal, then all of a sudden is not looking so much the same. Get this one. 70% of Americans are driving to jobs every day that they don't love, or maybe even logging on their computer, right? Because a lot of people aren't driving there anymore. They're just doing it from home. But think about that. Like, what kind of an impact does that have on your productivity at work, on how you feel about yourself, on relationships and things at home? Yeah, it's no wonder, right? We feel out of balance because we feel like we don't have any control in that. Faith is another area that, has just been being removed from so many different places, and so many people are, just questioning things and not really sure what they believe. People with having toxic friendships, 7 in 10 people have at least one toxic friendship in their life, someone that they are allowing access to that is not good for them, and that is can throw things out of balance, right? And then like fun, who has time for fun? Right? Because if we are living in this unbalanced world that has all these other issues going on around us, that's not going to, we're not going to be having a whole lot of fun because we have all these other things that are vying for our attention. So what of those, they all start with F's. And if you already peeked ahead in the book, these are the 7 F's that we're going to be talking about, the 7 areas that you need to balance and grow in, right? To live this life that you desire. So that's where these are coming from. So let me just say them again. Fitness, which is anything health related, mental or physical; finance; family; field; faith; friends; and fun. Which of those are you either seeing in balance around you, or, if you're willing to admit, seeing in balance in you when you look at that list or when you hear that list? I want you to think about like kind of identifying like 1 or 2 places where that imbalance may be happening. And what we're going to be talking about in this book is how do we create balance in those areas, right? And really thinking about, here's my next question. What would balance look like for you? So when you think of the word balance, what do you think of?
The ideal life.
Okay. I think of that stacked rock picture that you see like on the beach, where those rocks are like perfectly stacked and you're like, how in the world are those sitting on top of each other and not falling over, right? That wave isn't going to crash into it that you can see beyond it because it's usually sitting on a beach, or some kid isn't going to come knock it over. But yeah, it's just like everything is just kind of sitting right on top of each other, and it's not falling all over the place. Any other thoughts or ideas? Well, one of the illustrations that I loved from the beginning of what we just read for today was the whole illustration of the spinning plates. Did you read that? right? So how many of you have been to a circus and you've seen that person spin a plate? Now, I'm not really going to spin this because A, I have not practiced, and B, I did see they actually have a little groove in the bottom of the plate, so it helps the stick to stick there so they can actually spin it, but it's still not easy, right? Just because there's that groove to make it easier doesn't mean that it's easy. But you see that person who's spinning the plate, right? And they start with the first one, and then they throw up a second one, and they throw up a third one. And we're going to talk about 7 different areas in this book. So it's almost like having 7 different plates spinning. But what happens? Like, you get plate number 1 spinning, and maybe you get to 2 and 3, and then you're about to do number 4. And you kind of look back and you realize number 1 is like, it's like about to crash. What do I do? Right. And so if you're in the audience, you're like, oh, what's she going to do? Like, is she going to like keep spinning to get to number 7 and let that other one fall? Is she going to stop? And she going to, run back to the first one? And, and just kind of watching that person go back and forth and keep those plates spinning. Here's the thing. It is impossible to be perfectly balanced all of the time, right? This is not going to look like, okay, so if we take our 24 hours in a day times 60 minutes in an hour, that would actually work out to 205.7 minutes if we divide it by 7. So this is not about, I'm going to give 205.7 minutes to my fitness each day and to my family each day and to my field each day, right? It's not about that, but it's about having a life where plates aren't crashing to the floor all the time, right? So when we wake up in the morning and say, okay, what plate is feeling really wobbly right now? Right, and paying attention to that. And sometimes we just keep going in life and we're really not paying attention to how things are feeling, what they're doing. And then, we wonder why things start crashing, and then we're trying to pick them up off the floor, which takes a whole lot more than just giving it, one more little spin, right, to keep that going. So this is not about perfection, but it's about having intention and being aware of how our plates are doing as we're moving forward. So, thoughts, ideas, when you think about that picture, what does balance look like for you? Be thinking about, right, what that looks like. And you may even be like right now, like, Lissa, I have no idea what that would look like because I've never had balance, right? I think sometimes we just go, is this even possible? Is there even such a thing? And yet I do know that we don't have to keep living completely, with everything crashing on the floor, right? So while it may not be the perfectly stacked tower of rocks or every plate perfectly spinning all at the same time, and I can just gently just touch each one to kind of keep it going again. It may not look like that, but we're going to start moving in that direction rather than the living by default. So you're in that with me? So what I asked you to do today, and I know some of you are still waiting in your book, so you may not have even had a chance to read yet. So you'll play catch up when you get. Is we're going from introduction through chapter 4 today, and we're not going to sit here and rehash everything that's in here because that's why we're reading ahead. But I want to kind of break this down because if you're looking at it, there was kind of like an introduction section, and then they start talking about the 7 F's. Okay, so we're going to not talk about the F's yet, right? The 2 that we're going to get to today, but we're just going to I want to go back to that more introduction section. So I shared a little bit about the spinning plates because that was something that really stood out to me. What was an aha? Or so when you're coming to our book club, here are the 2 things that I'm going to always ask you to come with: an aha and a question. Okay, so what was something that it could have been, maybe it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, you've never heard it before, but it just really made you go, I need to think about that. Or it could be something that you've not really ever thought of before and it was a brand new thing. Or, it could just be something that you just needed to hear again today because that's right where you are. So I'm going to just open it up for those of you who are on live. Again, if you're watching the replay, this is where, I'm sorry we can't hear from you, but if you want to message me and share what those are, we would love to hear it. And if you're in the Repurposed Inner Circle Facebook group, please put it in there because that will benefit even more people. But from the beginning part, talking about balance and what a growing life looks like, what stood out to you? What was your aha?
Mine was in the pink bike about how he talked about, the wheels were rusty, the spokes were bad, and this sort of thing. And he was in pain and that he took it out on everybody else. And oftentimes when our wheels all out of whack, not only does it affect us, but it affects everybody else too.
So true. I mean, poor guy. So if you didn't read this section yet, basically this, one of the authors was talking about when he was a kid, how he had to use his sisters, because he had 3 older sisters, he had to use their hand-me-down bike, which was pink. Like, let's not get lost in the fact that it was a pink bike. It had also been used, right? And so he was talking about how this was his mode of transportation. And so he would oftentimes, because it was not in the best condition, and it was probably not exactly the right size and, fitted the way that it should be. And, the tires were worn and all of that. It was a lot of work for him to get places. So I love that. Yeah, it wasn't just about him on his bike, even though he spent most of his time by himself on the bike. It was then the fact that he was frustrated and then taking it out on them, or, just how he was looking at the situation and feeling like he says, there's times I was barely moving. I felt stuck in low gear. It wasn't balanced. It was broken. It was the wrong size. It was damaged, all of these things. And he just was weary, fatiguing, and frustrated. Anybody, have you ever felt that way in your life when the things are unbalanced? Those words, weary, fatigued, and frustrated, right? And depressed, stressed, tired, and going nowhere, right? Is what he was talking about. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Nikki. It's such a good reminder that maybe we're just working harder sometimes than we should too, right? Like, and I don't know his situation. Maybe he didn't have any other way that he could get another bike, but he just kept trying to make the same bike work over and over again, which wasn't going to, really change the situation at all. Maybe he could have gone and gotten a job and gotten some money together, or found one from another friend or something like that to not make it so hard. But yeah, I promise you, he's not riding a pink bike now. I'm pretty sure he's figured this out, right? And that's why that next section is about the 2 roads to this kind of a balanced life. And what I love is that very guy who told that story was on a path of using what we're going to learn about in this book, of having a system and having support for getting his life in balance. And when he was doing that, it was rocking, right? Like, it was not so hard, and he was going where he wanted to go, and things were good in his life. But guess what happened? And he's very open about this throughout the book. And anytime you hear him speak, like, he got off the bike. He started going off in his own direction, doing his own thing, thinking, I got this. And it was not surprising that life ended up being very out of balance and very out of whack, and and very difficult, and a lot of effort was going in just trying to keep the wheels on his life, right, and keep that bike moving forward. So in the story, when you read this, he reaches out to his friend who had shown him this system of how you can have a way that you're working towards the life that you want. And when he finally decided to commit to the system, it changed everything, right? And he's decided then and there, if this helps me get out of, and he was in a really bad spot, so I won't share everything from his story so you can read it, but if this will help me get out of this, I mean, like, every area of his life was completely, in the dumps, then I'm going to teach other people how to do this, right? And so I love that. So often it's out of our challenges that this comes. So since there's only just a few of us on, and Dr. Barbara, you're more than welcome to chime in, whether you've read it yet or not, because I know you're waiting on your book. What questions come up in this whole area of balance, unbalance, life just feeling, really hard sometimes? Any questions that come up, or if Dr. Barbara, even if you have an aha in any of that, just when you're thinking about your own experience or what you've heard us talking about from here?
My own experience in my midlife and raising 2 who are now adult daughters, I think what happens with women, we tend to, we're wired to be nurses. Nurses, you know that, and so do women. But what happens, women get extremely, as we get older, aging forward, some women don't have the tools to know how to really balance. So I give my tips in my book. One of the tips is to really know your core values. There's so many exercises you can Google on core values, but I have one in my book, in my work. It's just list the first 5. My top one has always been faith and health and family and integrity. When you figure out what really is important to you, then as you age forward is important, or just women in general. Those are big clues to how you want to spend your time.
So true.
Now, if you put family in there, which I'm sure most people will do, you'd be surprised how many women put that as the top one and everything goes down. Because family's important. But as we get older, especially because I have two daughters, one in college, and I'm in my midlife, and my youngest is in sophomore high school, I had to really acknowledge that they are now creating their own lives.
Right? Yes. And so it's not
So
that
we
they're
got
not
to figure
important.
out how to balance. And also, guess what I discovered for myself for this listen? Is to put humor in my life.
Yes.
I'm intentionally working on that lesson because I'm a very serious person. So I've incorporated that in my balance.
Yes. I'm so
It's
glad.
okay for us to laugh.
That's why I want you around, because I want more of that as well. And I popped on a meeting this morning and I was finishing up messaging somebody back, and the girl leading the meeting was playing some music, and she's like, Lissa, this is for you to get some more fun into your life, because she knows that fun is an area that I'm working on. And so I was like, okay, as soon as let me just finish this message, and then I'll enjoy the music. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we have to take care of ourselves. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. And as we age, this, I think this concept is fantastic for teenagers, right? For my daughter, who's a senior in college and high school. So before she goes into college and gets into a career, gets into, long-term relationships, gets it, before she really starts kind of making a lot of those big life decisions, for her to think about, what do I really want? And what has God called me to do? And what do I envision this looking like? Instead of just like a lot of us did, we just did the next thing. We did what was expected. We did what was available, those types of things. And then we get to this point in midlife where life has changed, because either our kids are leaving the nest, like you talked about, or we've had, a marriage that's ended. And so now life looks different, or a career or job that went away, or a health crisis. We usually have something that's that wake-up call that says, hold on a second. Maybe how you've been living up till now, number one, isn't going to keep working for you, because now priorities and focuses have shifted. Or maybe that's just it's not taking you in the direction that you want to be, because it's been giving over control to somebody else, or just to chance, right? And living by default instead of by design. So I love that. So here's the list of the 7 we're going to be talking about. And Dr. Barbara, you just hit on several of them. And this is the order that we're going to read them in the book. So you can put them in whatever order personally, and we'll walk you through. Once we get through the 7, then the next thing we're going to be doing is looking at where you are in each one of these areas, so you can see where how you prioritize them and what areas are low. I mean, think about, I want you to think about, as I read this list, if you're on that pink bike, right, and there are areas of the tire that aren't filled up, how is this going to slow you down? Right? And what would happen if you were to pump up those areas in your life? So here are the 7 areas. Again, they all start with F. We have fitness, finance, family, your field, which is your career. It could be having a business. It could be even full-time mom or grandma. It could be volunteering, whatever you do for work to serve in your day. Faith, friends, and fun. So they all start with F, which is really fun. And they all tie together. And you're going to see when we get to the next section in the back, we're going to create a wheel for your life, so you can see, how do I roll? Am I like that kid that's just working hard, trying to make this old pink bike work and putting out a lot of effort and just feeling frustrated? Yes.
Lissa, what is number 2?
Finance.
Oh, finance. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Or is there an easier way, right? What if I pump up my tires, right? What difference would that make? What if I, make sure all my spokes are connected? What if I make sure everything's in alignment, and then we're not feeling so out of balance all the time? So the first 2 we hit on for this week to be able to talk through. So the first one is fitness. So let's just kind of, we're just gonna spend a few minutes talking about this. When you think of fitness, now remember, this can be mental or physical. So it's not just about, like, am I going to the gym? This is about, what thoughts am I putting in my head and what am I thinking? This is about, what food am I eating? This is about, how am I moving my body? So it incorporates all those areas. So whether it was from what you read in here, if you were able to read before we met today, or just you thinking about this area of your life, what comes up to you, or what comes up for you, I guess I should say, when it comes to the area of fitness, and where you are right now, or and how you're feeling about that?
Well, fitness is important for me. I mean, way up there, which I'm grateful for because I feel very healthy at my age of 76.
You are fantastic.
But it started in my 40s. You know, my doctor always told me when I was younger, he said, how you feel when you get up in the morning is a telling indicator. And you want to be able to feel good. So fitness is a responsibility that we have to take in order to live a long, healthy life.
So true, right?
So the top part, it's very top for me.
Mm-hmm. Because if we're not giving, here's what I always say, if you're not paying attention to your fitness, right, to your wellness, inside or out, one day your wellness will demand your attention.
Yeah.
Right. And then you will be forced to give that attention. And then it will now be taken away from all these other areas that you would love to be pouring into as well. Right. But you're not going to have anything left to give because it's going to all have to go towards that. So yes, being intentional. And it's never too late, right? I mean, if you're listening to this and, you know, and you're in your 40 or you're 60 or you're 20, like saying, what am I choosing today? Right?
Never.
Love that. Love that. Nikki, what came up for you with fitness?
And research says that walking is the best exercise if you're just starting out.
Yes. And so easy to do, right? No excuses. Nobody's ever somewhere that they can't make it happen. You don't need anything. You don't have to have anyone. So it's an easy thing to do. And what I find is that Nikki is, I know, is an animal lover. So animals, like especially the dogs, tend to get me out more because they need to, you know, they need to be walked. So that can be a fun thing. Or I'll grab my dog.
I wish I had a dog, Nikki. I wish I had a dog. I'm jealous. But yes, dogs do get you out. Huh, Nikki?
I have cats. Lissa has dogs.
Yes, but she dog sits.
Right.
She dog sits.
Any kind of a pet.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. Gets us out, right? And you know, they're always moving, right? Moving or sleeping. So we can learn a lot from them. Nikki, what came up for you in the fitness? Any ahas or questions for you?
Well, I liked one of the things, it's a side note where I put, if you're reading this chapter and are looking for the next quick fix, the next thigh master, a screaming ponytailed trainer running like a gazelle, you're not going to find it. I thought that was great. And he talks about, you know, he says, it sounds simple, but trust us, it's not easy. Look around you. If you live in a city or you're never more than one block from a quick 2,000 plus empty calorie meal, you know, and, you know, we all complain about not having enough time. And so we run through the drive-through or we, you know, throw something quick in the microwave that's, you know, full of sodium and preservatives and things like that. So it's the fact of planning. If you plan ahead, I have a friend who's a flight attendant, and one Sunday a month, she makes like 3 or 4 like egg casserole kind of things that she can freeze, cuts them all up, packages them. So she has her meals to take with her on her flights. So she's not eating, you know, in the airports or, you know, things that aren't healthy for her.
Right. I love that. We never have an excuse other than our own laziness, right? We can always find a way to make it happen. And I think it goes back to what Dr. Barbara was talking about earlier, was knowing what priority that has, right? When my health has a priority, I'm willing to give the time to do the preparation, to do the planning, to go and take the walk, to, you know, to fill my mind with the healthy thoughts and the things that are going to help me to grow. When I'm not prioritizing my wellness inside or out, I don't see any value in giving time, money, and energy to that. And so I think that's really where it starts, is saying, you know, what value does this have? And then being able to invest in that in such a way that's going to show that that has value for us. Right. I love the fact that you said it's simple, right? Like it is simple, but it's not easy, because if, you know, everybody would choose it. We all have access to, you know, healthy things that can go in us and on us. And even just this, well, the 2 quotes that were right at the very beginning of the chapter, if you want to keep it really simple, eat less than you burn, or burn more than you eat. I always say you can't not exercise a bad diet, so you do want to watch the quality, but look, it really doesn't have to be some huge scientific formula and all these, calculations to count this and track that and all the things. It can really just be very simple as that. And, and Jim Braun is quoted here too, of saying, take care of your body because it's the only place that you have to live. So if we don't take care of it, guess what? We're not really going to be living in a full way and able to do all of these other things that we say are important to us. So at the end of each chapter, there's a quick little tips page. So for those of you who are just listening or you haven't had the book yet, let me just quick read what these are. They'll give you some ideas. Because what we want to do is we want to raise our awareness as we're going through these areas in the beginning. We want to raise our awareness. Number one, where is this fitting in my life right now? Am I giving this the attention that I want to give it? Or is this an area that I want to be giving more attention to? So the first one is keeping it simple. Don't get caught up in the hype and quick fixes. Anything worth doing is worth doing right? So it is going to take blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe not blood, but it's going to take probably sweat and tears. But if you are committed, we will reap the benefits of that. Second one is work harder. So when you decide to work out or go for a bike ride or play in the backyard or whatever, bring it, do it and do it fully so that you are truly getting something out of it. The harder you work and the harder you play, the more you burn. So find those fun ways to move in your day. It doesn't always have to be, I'm going to the gym and I'm putting on, whatever. It can just be, getting out with the dog or going for a bike ride, or sometimes it's just doing some stretches or, some things like that in between, appointments can be that. And then the third one is eat smarter. So here's what you're talking about, Nikki, right? Soda, fries, sugar, excessive breads and whites are bad. Fruits, vegetables, lean meats, nuts, and legumes are good. Don't pretend like you don't know how to eat healthy. We all know, right? So when we eat, make sure we're eating because we're hungry, and make sure that we are choosing things that are going to give our body the fuel that we want it to have. And I love this. So Dr. Barbara, this reminded me of you. Think of fitness as a journey, not a destination, right? This is not I will arrive there, even if you have a weight goal. Right. So as you're thinking about this, you may be thinking about, well, I would like to be this weight, and that's good. We're going to talk about how to set those kinds of goals in the second section of the book. But even when you reach that weight, it's not like, oh, I've arrived and now this goes off my plate. So I don't have to keep spinning this plate. It's just going to look different, right? Because now you're going to either be maintaining where you are, or you're going to be moving on to the next goal, which may be another weight goal that you have.
I think, Lissa, for me, it was more about feeling better. I had a coach about 20 years ago that made a bet. If I stuck with her for 90 days, I'm not going to stop working out. She was right. Yeah. The indicator for me is, do I feel better? And that's simple. Do I feel better? That's why I do it, because I feel better.
Right.
Eating correctly, I feel better. Walking, I feel better. So I think for women, just choose your body. What is it telling you? If you feel better, then you're doing something. But the body needs to move.
Exactly.
Research says the body needs to move as we age forward, because the body is not used to sedentary. Evolutionary research says we are movers. If we sit, the body does. That's why there are more suicides, unfortunately, with law enforcement who stopped abruptly in retirement.
Right.
Because the body is used to the body moving. So one of the doctors in my team said to me, he said, you know what the best exercise is? Dancing.
You're kind of tricking yourself into working out without realizing it, but you can't just do the,
really,
like this. You got to really get it on.
To keep it, because if we keep it simple, like Nick was saying, he said, keep it simple. He said, I'm an endocrinologist. But simple is just get up and dance by yourself or dance with somebody. And if you love dancing, that's one of the best exercises.
Exactly. I love that. Right. Yes. And if something's feeling good, going back to what you said a little bit before that, why would you stop? Right. Even if you hit a goal, if you're feeling good when you're doing that, that should just become a new normal of okay, this feels good and I'm going to continue doing this. And I always like to think about like, what will my goal achieve self 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the road? Think about what I'm choosing today. Would she say, thank you, that was a great choice. I'm so glad you decided to, go out for that walk instead of sit on the couch, or to, cut up some veggies instead of and just popping something in the microwave, like, or is she going to say, gosh, every time you choose that, like, I'm feeling it, right? I'm feeling it, because eventually, we are her one day. And so I want to make sure that, that we're looking back on that. So good. Well, there's a lot in that section.
Excuse me. Yeah, Lissa, also before you leave, I think it's important for us to be real, that motivation has a lot to do with it. It's not always easy to push yourself out of the bed and go to the gym.
Right.
So you have to think of things that get you going. Yes, well, I feel better. That feels good. But getting up and putting your clothes on. So here's the tip. The coach takes KG to go to the gym. You lay your clothes out the night before.
It takes the decision away in the moment. Right.
So you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, I do the same thing with my morning protein shake. I make it the night before when I'm finishing up in the kitchen and I'm washing the dishes.
Right.
It's just now become part of my routine. I make the shakes for my husband and I stick them in the fridge. And so in the morning, there is literally nothing easier to grab than that. And so, so whether it's with putting your clothes out or whether it's you're prepping your food ahead, you're taking the decision out of the emotional situation where we all know if we go off our emotions, they're usually not going to steer us in the right direction. Every once in a while we have that, that sudden, inspiration and that moves us towards, something amazing. But most of the time, if it's just, how you feel. Yeah. And I think the other thing too, I remember hearing statistically, they've done a lot of research on saying, I can't do this, or I have to do this, versus saying, I choose to do this, or I want to do this, right? If you're saying I can't have the chocolate cake, versus I choose to have, the strawberries with a piece of dark chocolate instead, there's a big different shift that happens because you are the one who's choosing that versus feeling like something's being done to you, right?
Or I get to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this is a privilege, right? And we live in a world, we get to do things that, we get to have choices with our food and with our movement and things like that people in other parts of the world don't even get to choose. So that's a great way. That's a gratitude accelerator. We'll talk about accelerators coming up here. So I love that, Nikki, because that can be a great way to accelerate, being grateful for the body we have. And how do we show gratitude to this body that we have? We take care of it because it's the only one we're going to get, right? We can't trade this whole thing in. You might be able to trade parts in, but I don't know about you. That's going to cost a lot of money and time and energy. So I'd rather keep as many of my parts as I can and just take good care of them. So good. Well, let's transition into the second of the F's that we were looking at for this week. Again, another one we could spend, weeks, months, years just talking about this, but we're just going to spend a few minutes because our whole goal in this section of this book, and even in this book in general, is let's raise our awareness, right? Let's think about where we are in these areas. So this one is the one of finance. And to keep it very simple, spend less than you make, right? Or make more than you spend, right? You could say it that way too. And winning with money is more about doing the small things consistently than doing the big things intermittently. How many of you have had that, like, you wish you would have invested started investing back when you were, in your 20s coming out of college, and, you look back at interest and what could have compounded over all that time. And yet we can't go back and reverse the clock, but we can think about how we want finances to look moving forward. So what either stood out to you from what you read that was an aha, a question that made you think, a commitment that you want to make towards it?
Talking about finances, it's challenging because everybody's in a different situation.
Sure. So well, we're all in a different situation with our health. We're all in a different situation with our families, right?
Yeah, with our health. So everybody's different. And the goal is, I like that you spend less than you make.
Right.
That's very simple.
Sure.
Or make more Yeah.
Mhm.
Finances is really challenging and it impacts lives. So that's something that I know women grapple with, you
Mm.
know.
Yeah, because we need money to live, right?
Yeah.
So it is something that's a part of, of our experience, at least in the world that we currently live in. And so often I think we're mindless, right? It's just, it comes in, it goes out, and we're not even really aware. And when we really were to sit down and look at all of that, so that's been one of the things that's come out of this for me. ULA actually has a program called the Green Gap Program, where they walk you through how do you spend less, right? So really watching where is it going. And so one of the pieces of that is having a monthly budget and really being able to see, because it may not feel, $10 here, $15 here, $50 here, 100, like all these things don't always seem like a lot. But when you get it all on paper or all in an app or all, I have a spreadsheet that we're using, and you can actually see where it's all going, and you're looking at it and going, wow, now I'm really going to start, asking myself two questions. One, was there really value in all of that? Or what could I have done with that to have better invested that money? Right. Because sometimes there are just superfluous things that aren't needed. That in the moment we thought we wanted or needed, but, really we didn't. And then also looking at, okay, so then how can I not only spend less, but how can I increase what I'm earning by increasing my service to others? And how can I start investing wisely so that I can use, the law of compounding to my benefit. And here's the other thing that I love that Willa puts in there is still having fun along the way. Right? Because it's like the diet. If you go on the diet and like you're never ever like, if you've been in those strict diets where it's like you can't ever have anything that's on your no list, like ever, ever, ever. And if you're, if you've got a big weight goal or something like that, you may be on there for, on that diet for, years. I mean, who knows, right? And so it's like that piece of cake is sitting there and you're like, oh my goodness, right? And so then once you dive into it, because you're finally so tired of being restricted, then you eat way more than you should have. And then, you feel like you've undone a lot of work that you've done. And I think the same thing can happen in our finances when it's so tight and there's no space for having some enjoyment. A lot of times we're going to give up on that plan because it doesn't feel good. It doesn't keep us going.
Yeah.
And even if it's just a few bucks.
This is a hard one.
Yeah.
I haven't read the book. Maybe Nikki or somebody else can comment because my book has not arrived yet.
Yeah. Nikki, what's out for you in there?
Well, I like the part when he was talking about the fact that, when he was trying to reduce debt, like you said, he knew that if he had to be so restricted, he would have never been able to do it. He knew himself that well that he had to have that fun and that not only did it affect him and his wife, but the kids, because they were starting their family and such, and being able to just go have pizza or something like that was fun. And they got the family together and stuff, and that's how he was able to put the 45% in, to pay the bill, and the 45% into investing. And then they still had the 10% to, and then they could decide, do I want to spend that $10 now or $60 or whatever it was now, or do I want to save it and put it towards a trip? So, and the family could make decisions together. It's like, okay, this is our $10. How do we want to, how are we going to do this? So I thought that was, I thought it was cool.
I love that. It's slowing down the decision process, right? So often we, especially with having phones now that we can pay for anything right from here, it's scary that, we can log into a website and it's already got our payment information. So we don't even have to do anything other than click, buy now, and it's on its way. And so it's so easy. They've made it so quick and easy that there's almost, they're trying to take away the time that we stop and think about our purchases, right? Because if you have to go get out your credit card and enter it in, or you have to drive to the store, like all of that is really going to make me go, is this really worth, what I'm putting into this time as well as money? Versus now it's just so quick and instant. It's like we hardly even think about that piece. So yeah, thinking about how do we want to spend this money that we have, and really investing that wisely, whether it's investing it in fun or whether it's investing it in something that's long-term, that you're working toward. So I think the biggest thing in all of these is awareness, right? Awareness of what is happening in this area. When it comes to my fitness, how much am I moving? What am I eating? What am I thinking? What am I listening to? What am I reading? And being aware of that, and then intentionally making wise choices to invest in our wellness. And then the same thing when it comes to the finances, being aware of what's coming in, what's going out, and what things I'm saying, are valuable in my life. And is this really what's going to move me towards this life that I want 5 years from now? Right.
And I loved when he's talking about the date with Halle Berry, and he's like, when he started finally making money, it was like, he didn't have a clue what to do with it. Just like these guys, if they really got to have a date with Halle Berry, they wouldn't know what to do with it or what to say to her or anything else. And so, like you said, by raising awareness, how to deal with money, how to use it properly, and what power it does have.
Right. He who's faithful with little will be faithful with much. But if you're squandering the little, guess what's going to happen when you have more? That's why most people who win the lottery end up bankrupt just a few years later, because they don't know what to do with it, right? Because they don't have that mindset of that value that's there, and how to align that with who they are. So good. Well, hopefully this is getting you thinking about these areas. And like I said, each one of these, we could dive in a whole lot more. So for the next time that we meet, which is going to be on the 8th, we're going to be reading chapters 5 through 9, which is going to take us through the rest of the 7 F's. So I would encourage you to, go back and think about where you are in the ones that we talked about today. And then as you go through each of those, because there'll be 5 of them now that you'll hit on in the next 2 weeks. I'm giving us 2 weeks in between, just so that way sometimes things every week come up too quickly. So we'll see how this pace works for us, but don't rush through them. Really pause and ask, like, what do I need to hear about this in my life right now? And what do I need to do about this? And how might this area of my life be out of balance? After we get through the 7 F's, we'll be talking about blockers. So what things get in the way. We'll be talking then the next time about accelerators, what things can help move us faster, farther, faster. And then we're going to be taking about, okay, now we're going to take an assessment and really look at our life and see where we are and make some commitments to the things that we want to do to be more in balance moving forward. So so that'll take us through April, and Lord willing, we're going to have more people that are able to join us live, and people that didn't even know this was happening, that say, yes, I want to have a balanced life, regardless of what's going on around me. How do I do that? Right? Here's a great place to start, because you guys, it's not a secret, it's a system. We talk about this all the time, and it's just a matter of what are we choosing to do with what we've been given, so that we're designing this life that's balanced instead of letting the world decide for us and by default being unbalanced. So any other last thoughts or things that you need or want to share before we get off today?
No, it sounds good.
Good. Well, thank you
I'm
so
looking
much.
forward to getting the book.
Yes. Well, hopefully that'll be arriving to you soon. It's an easy read, but I want you again to make sure that you slow down and really let it sink in and think about the different areas. And it's a great one to come back to, because you may be in a certain place in some of these areas right now. A year from now, you're ready to take things to the next level, or a year from now, there's a life situation that happens, or, something triggers something that makes you want to go back and rethink that area. So this is a process, a step-by-step process that you can use for any area of your life that you want to create more balance in and be growing. And so I love having tools like that, and then support like this, right, where we can come together and we can help support each other. So thanks to those of you who are on live today. Thank you to those of you who I know are watching the replay. Yeah.
Nice meeting everybody.
We will see you in 2 weeks on the 8th at same time, same place. And we'll read through chapter 9 for next time. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
Have a great
everybody.
day.